You are listening to the So Now What podcast with Lana Manikowski, episode number 190. So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us. Hello, beautiful one. Welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. If you are a regular listener, this week is going to sound a little bit different. If you are watching on YouTube, it's going to look a little bit different because I am coming to you from my hotel room in San Antonio, Texas, where I am attending the annual Congress of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, which is basically the scientific arm of reproductive medicine. Fertility doctors, fertility providers, clinic directors, people that create new technologies, people in the field, anything related to reproductive medicine, they are here in San Antonio this week. And I joined ASRM last year and attended my first meeting in Denver last year. And it was really a big step for me to take to join this membership. I am a member of ASRM specifically through their mental health professionals group, which has been a really great way for me to get to know some of the people in the fertility support space. Most predominantly, there's a lot of psychologists, social workers, people who trained to support women going through their fertility journey. Some of them work at clinics, some of them have their own private practices. And I thought, you know what? I want to start representing women who leave their fertility journey without a baby and figure out how we can broaden that conversation for women who don't have their rainbow baby, women who invested years and dreams and hopes and everything that we did to create a child. And when that did not become our outcome, you know, that is why I do all the work I do, was to create a space for women like us and create more awareness that more resources are needed. So if you are here to listen to this week's episode, I am not going to preach more to the choir about that, but I want to talk about a different side, maybe a little peek behind the curtain of what it feels like to be the creator of something that didn't exist, what it feels like to want to give up some days because you don't know if anyone is really listening and paying attention. And that happened to me this morning. So, little rewind. There is a council that I'm part of with ASRM called the Women's Council. And there was a breakfast this morning at 6:30. And I don't know about you, but for me, whenever I have something that is really important on my schedule, I can't sleep because I'm always worried. Did I set my alarm? Am I going to wake up? Am I going to sleep through this? Whatever the case might be. I had one of those almost sleepless nights because I didn't want to sleep through this event. And then the other side of me, we're going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. If you've heard about imposter syndrome and want to learn more, you're going to want to continue listening to this because Lana has been having some major imposter syndrome at this meeting and with the work that I do. And so I was laying here in bed. It was like 4:45 and I'm thinking to myself, do I really want to go to this breakfast? It is going to be a bunch of fertility doctors, and I'm probably going to be the only one in the room who is not a doctor, and they are going to be like, why are you here? You're a patient, you're not a medical doctor, you're a life coach. All these things went through my brain. And I thought to myself, I did not come all the way to San Antonio, Texas, and pay $35 on Southwest Airlines to check my bag with all my books in it to give away at this meeting, to sit here and lay in bed and feel like I don't belong. But it was a long conversation with myself, and I decided to go to this meeting. So Lana gets her cute little outfit on. You can see my outfit on Instagram, my little shiny disco ball looking outfit. And I went to this meeting, and one of the things that we were tasked with doing, we were sitting in round tables, was talk about any type of problems that are coming up in the fertility space and your potential solution. So keep in mind, I'm sitting with a bunch of doctors, so they're probably looking at it from their lens. And part of me was like, do I talk about the work that I do, or like what? And then I thought to myself, hell no, we are going to talk about this work. So we had to go around and talk about what problems we see. And of course, I talked about the lack of resources for women who leave their IVF journey without a baby. And solutions were talk about resources, offer resources, recommend books, recommend podcasts, talk about the fact that you can choose not to adopt, not do an egg donor, not to do a surrogate, and still feel like you are a worthy patient in the eyes of the doctor, in the eyes of the fertility clinic. So there was a representative from each table that had to go up and talk about what our discussion was. So the woman who went up from our table talked about my resources and talked about the fact that I was an author and I had books with me. And then you guys, they called me up on stage to talk about my book. So, little old me was not unprepared. I had my book with me, and I talked about my book, and I had maybe like 15 books with me because that was all I could carry in my bag without needing to need back surgery after this meeting. So I brought about 15 books with me to the breakfast, just thinking, maybe someone would want one. Well, I got up there and I spoke, and I talked about the fact that I left my fertility journey as a patient who did not ever get her rainbow baby, did not have a child, and I was never offered any resources. So I told people in attendance, if you want resources for your patients, if you want a free copy of my book, I brought some with me. I go back, sit at the table, people are continuing to talk, and the meeting ends, and literally it was like the floodgates opened. And doctors were lined up. I'm out of books at this point. All I had were these cute, little postcard-sized postcards I had made up with a QR code and information about this podcast, some of the work that I do. And doctors were telling me, oh my gosh, this is so needed. This is such a hard conversation. Everything I talked about a couple episodes with Dr. Bove when we talked about, what it's like to be a doctor delivering that news. And I felt so proud of myself that I did not give up on myself this morning, that imposter syndrome, that nobody cares about little old me who is a failed fertility patient. Nobody cares about some girl who wrote a book about how to create a life you love without the children that they dreamed of. If I would have listened to that voice, that imposter on my shoulder that told me to stay in bed and that the message I have is great, but really not that important, I would have missed out on a huge opportunity to give these doctors who care so much about supporting patients like us but don't know where to go. I would have missed out on an opportunity to help one more woman, maybe 100 more women, maybe 1,000 more women who are going to be where we have been. And I am so glad that I have the tools of coaching, that I know what imposter syndrome is, that I know how to listen to that conversation and decide that it is not the real conversation that is needed in my brain and in my life. So if you have ever struggled with imposter syndrome and want to talk about it, book a Thrive call. I would love to talk to you about tools that you can use to work through those voices in your brain. If you are somebody who has this idea and came up with something that you don't know if anyone is ever going to listen to, I encourage you to do it, because had I stayed in bed, who knows how many more people would go without resources. So I had to come back to my hotel room to replenish my books and I'm taking them all with me now back to the expo hall of the conference because I got invited by Resolve. If you know Resolve, it is the national organization that does advocacy work for people with an infertility diagnosis and looking to build their family. They invited me as a patient advocate, as a patient champion, to sit in their booth and talk to people who come by the booth and talk about my story. So, girls, you know I am taking more books with me to get the word out that our life can still be beautiful and meaningful and purposeful, even if we are, in air quotes, a failed fertility patient. And know that I am championing you in whatever efforts you have, whatever one thing you have in your brain today that is telling you that nobody cares, that it is not worth it, that it's time to give up. Do not listen to that. Be like me and say, I did not come all this way to turn around and stay silent. So I love you so much. I hope you have a beautiful week, and remember that it is never too late to discover your meaning. I'll talk to you next week. Hey, real quick, I just want to tell you about an awesome resource I created. If you have ever found yourself in conversations with people, or maybe people offering you suggestions about what you should do to become a mom, it's called The Top 27 Things People Say When You're Childless and How to Respond. You can get your copy free at lanamanikowski.com/things people say.